Donald Trump's approval rating has gone negative for the first time during the second presidential term. And this is a major problem for Trump, and maybe even more so, it's a major problem for Republicans other than Trump. Didn't take long, did it? Just over a month into his second term, Donald Trump's approval rating has officially flipped negative, according to 538. What this means is that more Americans disapprove of the job that Trump is doing rather than approve. This is the first time this has been the case during this second term. And if history is any indication, that is not a number that is likely to bounce back. Let me explain. Approval ratings for presidents in the modern partisan era only decline. And I've spoken about why before. There are many voters who default to the position of, I approve until the president does one thing I don't like, and then I'm gone. And then when that happens, there's no way to get those folks back. And we saw this with Biden. We saw it in Trump's first term. We saw it under a former President, Barack Obama. Once the president has done something you don't like, even if they come back and do a bunch of things you do like, people tend to say, overall, I disapprove. Now, what are the exceptions? Well, the exceptions are dangerous. George W. Bush and 9/11. George W. Bush's approval rating was cratering. And then 9/11 happened, and then he had record high approval, which he, of course, ultimately squandered again with the Patriot Act and warrantless surveillance, the Iraq War, on and on. But the point is, the sorts of events that in the modern political era significantly boost your approval rating, more than a point or two, right, are the sorts of events that can be very dangerous if presidents start to get ideas. This brings us back to last week. Would Trump allow a terrorist attack to happen if he thought it would benefit him politically? Let's put that aside for a moment. Now go back to the numbers. Trump's approval was just barely in the green by like 0.1%, more people approving than disapproving. And then the tide turned. Trump is now completely underwater. It's a brief, a small shift, but it puts Trump underwater. This came on the news of the tariffs taking effect. It immediately hit consumers. The stock market took a dive. Later that night, Trump gave the joint address to Congress, which was relatively well received by those who watched it, but the audience was overwhelmingly Republicans. And at a national level, it was not so well received. So what do we think is next, and what do we think this is all about? If you look at Trump's first term, his approval turned negative by day 15. So negative approval, underwater approval, doesn't necessarily mean that you can't hold on. But this is where it starts to become potentially a problem for other Republicans, because they do have other campaigns to run. And they need to manage the optics of, am I too closely associated with Trump or not? And they are the ones who now are going to have to figure out, do I just say nothing? Do I jump out and defend this guy who's increasingly unpopular? Do I come out and denounce him? Or do I wait until I actually have a re-election more relevant for senators rather than members of Congress, since members of Congress always have a re-election that they're up against? This is a major issue. CNN's Harry Enton said that Trump's approval numbers overall and on the economy specifically are historically awful heading into his joint address to Congress. And it's critical to understand that in both Biden's presidency and Trump's first term, once approval went negative, they never fully recovered. What it led to for Trump was losing re-election in 2020. What it led to for Biden was ultimately coming to believe he had no chance at actually being reelected, stepping aside, and Kamala Harris ultimately being defeated. So will Trump break that trend, or is this the start of a long, slow collapse? And then one other little wrinkle, just as like a side note. This might be the last time we even get 538's polling average on Trump, because ABC News is reportedly shutting down 538. And if that's true, once again, if you value data over vibes, that is not a good thing to see 538 shut down. But the numbers tell a story, which is Trump is facing an American public increasingly turning against him. And if the policies start hitting people's wallets as they already are, it probably is only going to get worse. Data brokers are continually collecting extensive details about your online behavior, address, phone number, email, financial information, even political views. This sensitive information about you can easily be found on public data search sites by anybody, could be an ex, could be an employer. And these brokers sell the data to other businesses and even government agencies like the FBI and NSA, who can buy it in bulk to surveil Americans without a search warrant. Scammers and spammers also get your details from these lists, and that's why you get the text messages and the calls and the emails. But you can stop it. Our sponsor, Incogni, will send removal requests to data brokers who are legally obligated to comply. If any of your information remains online, Incogni will follow up and ensure that it's taken down. Incogni keeps you informed every step of the way, and it just saves you countless hours of work that would be nearly impossible to do on your own. I use Incogni, and what they've managed to do is remarkable. Go to incogni.com/Pacman and use the code Pacman for 60% off. The link is below.